Hello, I'm Doug, and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And today we're at episode number 5 of popcorns, where we're veering away from our exploration of varieties of popcorns or different colors or breeds or things like that. And we're looking at seasonings for popcorn, and these are the savory seasonings. So I'm going to have one cooked in bacon grease, bacon fat. I'm going to have one that's spiced up with herbs and peppers. Okay, there's 2 like that. But we're starting off with cheesy ones, or cheese replacements. So before we get in and get funny powders and oils all over my fingers, let's get you to like this video, leave comments and questions down below, share it with friends, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell to get notified. So I'm not really into flavored popcorns, but cheese is one of the things I would do if I was going to do it, or cook it in bacon grease. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about my recipe modification I do when I'm going to be sprinkling powders and things on it I want to stick. So I took 90 grams. Oh, I don't have the popcorn here, but I'll put up a picture. I put 90 grams of Jolly Time Select White because it pops up really big. It's big, big, big. And then the flavors are mild, and the kernels are really tender. So it's a good replacement where the flavors aren't strong enough to compete with any of the flavorings that you're putting on the popcorn. And then, instead of popping in 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, I popped in 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. It doesn't hang behind in the popper, so it must be on the popcorn. And it's going to let those powders and seasonings stick better. So I popped the corn in the 3 tablespoons of sunflower oil, which is a nice light, compatible tasting oil that's mostly neutral, but if it has a flavor, it's a good one. Maybe a little buttery. And then I only added 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to the whole mixture to salt it and season it, because I knew some of these things might be salty. So I only used half my normal amount of salt. 3 tablespoons of the oil in my normal popcorn amount. But then after popping and salting, I split it up into 3. So this is 30 grams of unpopcorn. This represents 30 grams. This is 30 grams. Then I put on grocery store parmesan-romano. So these are at a local store for me, and they're fairly well grated or shredded, or they're very small pieces. But I took 2 tablespoons of each one and threw them in a little spice grinder, coffee grinder appliance, and just blitzed it until it was as powdery as I could get it. And that was after being in the freezer for half an hour. So I weighed it all out, got it together in a freezer, little tiny bowl, to make it harder, stiffer, easier to pulverize. Then I made a powder. So a tablespoon of the resulting powder went onto this corn. And what do we have here? This is Judee's blue cheese powder. So it is a thing that's provided just for seasoning, dips, cooking, different things. So I just used a tablespoon of this powder on the oily, partially salted popcorn, and shook it up in a paper bag really good, and threw it in the bowl. And the third item here is Bragg Nutritional Yeast, which I hear about all the time on seasoning popcorn discussions on the web. So when I'm exploring popcorn, this comes up quite a bit. So I didn't use, this is the commercial cheese preparation I use. I don't really like going, buying grocery store seasoned cheesy bagged popcorns, just because they're so expensive and so salty and so many other things in them. So I just don't like that part. So I did my own cheese, did their cheese, and then I did this nutritional yeast, which has a cheesy vibe to it, or at least a cheesy cheese powder feel on your mouth. So I guess we need to get into this. So I'd say cheese is my favorite topping, and then the spicy herbal things that I do next, they're not my favorite, but I know other people do, so I'm just going to go ahead and give it a try. And then I know bacon grease is going to be quite a hit. So I'm going to smell my own parmesan-romano concoction here. Oh yeah, it's cheesy. Just throwing it in the bag and mixing it up. This had the strongest aroma. It was almost overpowering. But now that it's cooled off a little bit more, I'm getting a little bit less of the aroma, but It is that Romano and Parmesan cheese aroma I get here. So, already dropping it. Oh yeah. Popcorn's very tender. There's a little bit of a saltiness to it. And then the cheese is that sharper Parmesan, almost stinky type cheese note. And when I looked at the bag after mixing it with my cheese powder I made, only the big pieces were left. So nowhere near a tablespoon of residue, but the big pieces didn't stick because it's just not oily enough. The fine pieces did stick. They are on here, I think. So it is cheesy. It's not strongly cheesy. It's not a pulverized texture that where the powder's getting on your tongue and changing things. But I would say it's a lightly salted, lightly cheesed kind of popcorn. So if you're after strong flavors, go buy the commercial bags. But this is a nice, subtle flavor from that cheese. And you could probably do things to get more cheese on the popcorn. Like use that Kraft Parmesan powder that's in the grocery store, or maybe some other brand or some other kind, or different processing to make grocery store cheeses and cheese shop cheeses more powdery and lighter and smaller pieces. So it's a very light flavor, definitely in the direction I was wanting to go into, but it could definitely be more intense, and lots of people will want more intense. But I'm pretty happy with it. That'd be a good snack for me. So likewise, 30 grams of unpopcorn turned into this. I put a whole tablespoon of this powder I bought on Amazon, and there might be versions at grocery stores or other food stores. So, blue cheese powder. Oh, it is that powdery feeling you get from eating the popcorn that's bagged and commercially prepared. It's that cheesy powder feeling on my tongue. And it's not as intensely cheesy as those grocery store bagged popcorns. In fact, I can't tell that it's blue cheese. This bag doesn't smell all that blue. I was expecting more blue cheese, more mold, more funkiness from the blue cheese. But it's merely cheesy at the moment. It could use a tad more salt. It could use a tad more of the cheese powder, but it's a very subtle thing right now, and I like it. It's a flavor, it's a touch, it's a hint. A lot of people might want twice as much blue cheese powder on this. And you could probably make it stick. The 3 tablespoons of oil to 90 grams of popcorn, I don't think is too much oil. I think you could go heavier, get more oil on the popcorn, and make more of this cheese stick to it. But that's just my prejudice. You'd have to really do the experiments. So I'm happy with this. And happy with the outcome from this blue cheese powder. It's not as funky or as strong as I was worried it might be. So I think that's a success. And you're getting a lot less salt if you want less salt. And you're getting a lot less of the unpronounceable additives that might be in the commercially prepared popcorns. So I'm saying yes on that. Go, Judee. Now, I don't know if my fingers are going to be the same. They're powdery from that Now we're looking at the nutritional yeast. Again, 30 grams of unpopcorn got sprinkled with a whole tablespoon of this stuff. Definitely bigger flakes than this blue cheese powder. You can see flakes and pieces. They're not microscopic. So some of this may have fallen off. Let's see how the flavor is. Oh, interesting. Let's say it's, I don't think this has any salt itself. Oh, look. No, it's dried yeast and vitamins. Built-in enriched. So no salt in here, so all the salt you want better comes from salting the popcorn. But the flavor is halfway in a cheesy direction. And then the rest of it is yeasty. And it's not overtly yeasty, like bread or beer. It's halfway in the cheese direction, and then parts of it, some other fraction, is some other kind of flavor that's not familiar. So I could definitely do nutritional yeast as a topping or a cheese replacement. A little bit of butter, or maybe dairy is what you're trying to avoid. I would try to find a way to get more on it. Use more of the powder. Or put, instead of here, you can see that in the overhead, lots of powder. It's not on the cheese. That's at the bottom of the bowl here. Some more oil, or grind this up in a grinder. Maybe you can get a finer powder out of it. So yeah, the intensity of this flavor is not as strong as I thought it would be. And the pieces are too big to stick completely. But it's definitely going in the right direction and gives me a hint for further experiments. So that's it for this round. Back in a bit. Okay, so the second round is more spicy herbal type toppings. So this one is just a mixture of dry herbs and spices I found on the internet and put it together, and it seemed okay. And then this is also a combination, but very different stuff. It's very exotic to me. Real zaatar, Middle Eastern spices, with several ingredients that they list, and aleppo peppers. So dried, ground specks, flakes, both of these things are in here. So I'll go through. I think this one's going to be zippier and spicier, so I will do it second. So let me get the list of ingredients here. This is a tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of dried parsley flakes, 1.5 teaspoons dried basil, 1.5 teaspoons dried marjoram, 1.5 teaspoons of dried thyme, 1.5 teaspoons of pepper, I think they mean black pepper, and that's what I used, and 3/4 teaspoon cayenne pepper. You grind that all together in a spice grinder and store it in an airtight container for up to 6 months. And then on the popcorn, you take 2 cups of popcorn and add 1/2 teaspoon of seasoning. Well, what did I do here? I took 90 grams of popcorn, popped it all in 3 tablespoons of oil, extra oil to make things stick. Split it in 2. I think 53 grams went this way and 53 grams went this way. And then I put just 1/2 teaspoon of this very fine powder. Oh, I didn't bring it. It's very finely ground. It is just powder. So I thought it's going to go pretty far. 1/2 teaspoon on here. I tasted it. Yes, that's all you need. Over here, I put a whole teaspoon because the pieces were bigger and I didn't think it was going to stick very much. So basically, that's the idea here. Is let's go in and give it a taste. Well, let's see if we can smell things first. Oh yeah, there's definitely an herbal, spicy note floating around above it. But there's so many things it's hard to pick out anything specific. I don't get any individuals, but something Italian maybe. So popcorn tasting time. Oh. I get herbal things right away. It's interesting. And on the palate, I can't really describe anything, pick out anything, because there's so many things in there. Okay, peppery finish, spicy peppery finish. If that appeals to you, the recipe is fine as is. If it doesn't, you can reduce or remove the black pepper. Could be cayenne also. A little bit of cayenne is in this, and either one could do this kind of finish here. I'm feeling it. Yes, it's there. If I was going to make this again, I might cut down the black pepper and the cayenne to half of what they are. And I like spicy. So the other notes are interesting. They're herbal, spicy. You go, oh, that's okay. Nothing really stands out as an identifiable, familiar flavor. But the combination is okay. And I'm not hating it. This sort of thing doesn't usually appeal to me, but I might play around with some variation of this. It's a little softer in that spicy finish. So, it's okay. It's a good base I can work from. And I'll put a link to this recipe in the description below. So this one came from a certain website that suggested this as one of the best popcorn seasonings ever. And I think they're biased. I think they use way too much stuff. I didn't use as much as they did. They have a recipe using olive oil, kosher salt, zaatar, aleppo pepper, and lime zest. An elaborate procedure to spray the popcorn with olive oil spray to get all the stuff to stick. And I didn't really go through all that. I did the lime zest thing once, and I said I'm not going to do that again. To get it on the popcorn, to mix it in with these spices. So I think you can see red specks here because they dropped off into the bag, and that's what fell on top of the popcorn after I poured it in. So maybe it's more representative if I stir it up and get some more stuff from the bottom with less of the big chunks of spice. So here we go. And left-handed, zaatar and aleppo. Oh yeah. Definitely a whole different universe that I'm used to, spice-wise. It's distinctly Middle Eastern. And the spice grows from the back. It is a finished, it pops up on the finish. So it's pleasant, there's a sweetness to it. There's an oddness to the spicing that goes, all the seasoning is moving in the same direction. Everything complements everything else. So the zaatar is a mixture of different things. And there's quite a bit of moisture in here, so it makes it hard to chop up and pulverize. The ingredients are hyssop, sesame seeds, sumac, olive oil, salt. Oh, that's not as many as I thought. So I got this from Amazon. I got this from Amazon. And they are good choices. So people who like this Middle Eastern profile could experiment quite a bit and maybe follow the recipe that's on the website. But this is interesting and better than I thought it would be. So, again, this got only half a teaspoon of the dry, pulverized, powdery herbs and spices because I knew everything would stick when it was powdered that fine. And then here, I put on a whole teaspoon of stuff because I knew it wasn't going to stick because it's big and some of it's going to fall off. Now this is about right. Most of the herbal notes over here are about right, and only the peppery stuff at the finish is really too strong. Over here, it's a good combination, and I think the spicing is right for the rest of the mixture, so I wouldn't change anything on this side over here. And my combination was about a tablespoon of this in a spice grinder. And I just ground it up as far as I could. Tried to make the finest thing I could. And this is a good combination of flavors. I like it. So I'd say this is 2 thumbs up for these two, even though this is not really my profile or something I would do. These are kind of successful seasonings. So on to the last one. So last in our set of savory seasonings for popcorn is bacon fat. Bacon grease, that's the cooking medium. So standard recipe, but I'm using Jolly Time Select White to impart less flavors from the corn. And then I use 2 tablespoons of bacon fat that I just saved from cooking bacon, and keep it in the fridge in an airtight container and pull it out to use when you need it. So 2 tablespoons of bacon fat and 90 grams of popcorn. 1/4 teaspoon of salt when it's done, and shake it all up, air it out, get rid of the steam. And this is what we have here. So I'm really getting that smoked, cooked umami note that I get other times. Just mostly from yellow corn and grapeseed oil or maybe olive oil. But this is overwhelming. Seems like it's associated with real meat, which it was. So there's a smokiness, a meatiness, an umami-ness, savory notes. Something is very inviting. It makes you think it's going to be good. So let's give it a try. Wow. Corn strike to me is really sweet. Smoky, meaty. Yeah, and I think it needs all the salt that I usually put in. You might think bacon fat would be salty, but it doesn't really dissolve salt. It takes water to do that. So it's not really any saltiness coming from the bacon grease. This is perfect. This is good. I taste bacon. Some bacon notes. But the popcorn is coming through too. It's not overwhelmed by the bacon. This is why it's good to know what the popcorns themselves taste like, and then what seasonings you can add, and how strong they are. So you can adjust and do your own recipes and come up with something you really like. So I can tell from tasting this that I can give this to my son-in-law and it will be a big, big hit. So I'm liking this. This might be my favorite out of the whole sets, or maybe one of the cheese ones I can work on and make it into a real hitter also. So those are just a few of the ideas on how to season your own popcorn that you cook yourself on the stovetop without relying on microwave popcorn makers. So you get to choose the oil, you get to choose the seasonings, you get to choose the popcorn, you get to choose how much of that seasoning to use. So I think it's a pretty good idea that some people will want to check out. So we'll be back with some other variety of popcorn soon. So watch out for those. And cheers. Pop till you drop.